Hello, all of you from our sunny Portugal. I am Noemia and I'm an English teacher and a textbook developer for one of the biggest publishers in Portugal. I was asked to share my experience and views on the changing role of the teacher brought about by the pandemic. And just to contextualize, I teach in a secondary school 30 kilometers north of Lisbon in the municipality called Alenquer. I teach students from an average age of 15 to 19. And this is important information as it surely conditioned my experience of teaching during confinement, which was quite positive, I would say. The fact that my students were not kids, they were quite autonomous using online tools and computers, allowed me to experiment new approaches much more easily than if they were younger. So quite briefly, I will tell you about my personal work with my classes, how I organized lessons and the knowledge I could draw from it, good ideas that have worked with me, and then a brief perspective about digitalization of teaching as a teacher and as a textbook developer based on this period of teaching during confinement. So starting with organization, at school I had two 90-minute lessons a week with each of my classes. And the school board then decided that for the 2.5 months we would be working from home, we would have a 45-minute online lesson with each class only. So as the school didn't make it mandatory to use a specific platform, I used my publisher's platform, this one, to do almost everything with my students, mainly because it was quite comprehensive and easy for assigning a variety of tasks in a variety of supports and also for getting feedback from my students. I created virtual classrooms which worked on a weekly basis. And the three most important things I drew from my online work were, first of all, you have to realize that you cannot replicate a classroom lesson in an online lesson. It doesn't work. Your online lessons should be thought in an online delivery perspective. You're not supposed to be exposing content to a camera. Students won't listen to you. They won't retain anything. Instead, give them challenging, creative, varied material on a topic you want them to work on in their offline time. And then dedicate your online lesson to discussing what they did, to raise questions, to clarify doubts. Secondly, be organized. Students complained about the fact that teachers would send them tasks several times during the week in between online lessons, so they were never sure if they were updated about what to do in each subject, and they have 6 or 7. So what I did, and I think it worked, was to assign the following week's tasks immediately after the online lesson, which was always about the previous week's tasks. And I would assign tasks only that once. So students in general have poor organizational skills, study skills, and it was their main difficulty, I think, to manage tasks that were coming from various sources at different times and with no particular method. So thirdly, one thing that worked very well was collaborative work and project work. By collaborative, I mean combining content from different subjects and assigning a common task or a common broader project for 2 weeks, for example. It worked amazingly well and students started to see links between different subjects of their area of study. I had much more to say, but I'm running out of time now. And just to say that for me as a teacher, this experience of teaching during the pandemic gave me the chance to experiment a different approach using a lot of individual digital material that was already available, but I hadn't had the chance to use it and apply it in a classroom with 28 students at the same time. As a textbook developer and being familiar with how amazing digital resources from textbooks are, I'm glad that teachers are now more familiar with new ways of doing things that can help them really get to their teenage students more easily. So thank you. Best wishes from Alenquer, Portugal.
Good time of day, dear colleagues. My name is Valeria Matskevich and I'm a teacher of English from Ukraine. I basically teach students of secondary and high school. So, the topic we have to discuss today is quite actual because we still are in the middle of going through the corona process, etc. So, how did it all start and what what was it like when it began here in Ukraine? To tell you the truth, the first day the kids went away from school and stayed at home to learn online wasn't a kind of scary for me, because maybe I felt something, I don't know why. I had created the Viber groups with my students at the beginning of the school year, so I wanted to read them whenever I want and give them any tasks I want quickly without having to ask parents, their class teachers, or whoever else. So whenever I needed to send them something or give an announcement, I just texted it on Viber, and all my kids were with me, so they knew everything. So when the lockdown started, I had no problems reaching my students. However, my colleagues had. They didn't know how to connect. So some of them just asked class teachers to give some messages. Others created groups, but again it was difficult because they already had to get the kids' numbers when they were away. Well, we faced some challenges as well, and speaking of me, I wasn't interested in just writing something and posting on the internet. I wanted to connect to my kids, so I decided to master some online programs like Google Classroom and Zoom. And of course, I had a good idea to start working with my English lab. I teach English, so it was a really great media to help me. Well, I did it, and I was great. But there was another thing: my kids were digitally ignorant. So the next challenge I faced was how to explain how to use it. I spent some hours texting messages, sending videos on Viber, showing how to log in, how to reach what I'm asking them to reach. But some time passed and they managed to do it. So we were online. My colleagues who are a bit older than I am, they are digitally ignorant as well. So they had to spend more time preparing for that. It was really difficult for them, but most of the teachers coped with the task, and at least they opened their digital classrooms, Google Classrooms, and managed to communicate with the kids, at least like that. Well, and the next problem is that being at home, the kids were uncontrolled. So parents went to work and they didn't manage to check whether all the kids were present at the lesson or not. Well, that was my task, to make my lessons interesting and make the kids want to visit them. 90% of my students were present, though those who weren't, like, I communicated with their parents and we made some agreement, so the kids appeared. Well, and the last thing I didn't really like was the amount of home tasks to check. When you face kids, when you see them face to face, it's much easier because we talk and I can give them a mark. So being online, you just have to check whatever they send you. You have to correct it, so you spend much more time on that. But luckily, the lockdown has finished already. Here in Ukraine, we started going to school, and I hope that everything will be fine. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I have been really helpful.
Hey there, my name's Aldo de Pape and I'm the founder and CEO of TeachPit. I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of you at the EEPG conference in September 2021, and I sincerely hope that it will be an opportunity to exchange ideas with you on how we all can ensure that teaching and learning will never stop. I must say that over the past year, in many countries, we were very close with education coming to a halt. Many schools all over the world, public and private, were closed, and teachers and students were forced to continue to work from home. Now, if you are a student or a teacher in a country where technology is facilitated and where you already have a first understanding of what it is like to work with a digital tool and digital content, then the challenge, although still difficult, might have been somewhat solvable for you. However, there are sadly too many examples of schools in countries where there was nothing. No plan B, no digital infrastructure, no content, nothing. And I want you to think about that for just a second. If education stops in its entirety, what kind of effect will that have on our way of living, on our economy, on our society as a whole? Now I hear you thinking, luckily this did not happen in a place where I live. Whenever something like this happens, we prefer to think of it in isolation. Another person, another school, another country, not me. Now, unfortunately, the pandemic has exposed to us that this type of thinking is archaic. The pandemic is global, so we're all in the same boat together. COVID-19 has made it clear it does not discriminate and does not make a distinction between the wealthy or the poor. Specifically, when all of us are striving to be so global, so interconnected in our thinking, so transparent and accountable in a rapidly increasing new digital world. During the pandemic, we had the great privilege to work closely with two governments, and in particular with their ministries of education, respectively in Ecuador and Albania, to train tens of thousands of teachers in using distance learning technology. We trained over 12,000 teachers in Albania and over 20,000 in Ecuador, where we managed to train, test and certify each and every teacher who participated in our training module. Today we're very happy that all of them are using our dedicated content management systems. Now, the most impressive thing that I came across during these training trajectories was how extremely grateful and happy these teachers were that something was being done on a central level. But this also speaks to how nothing, and literally nothing, was being done for neither the student nor the teachers to soften the blow caused by the pandemic. We received messages from teachers who took it upon themselves to take pictures with their smartphones from their classical textbooks, and then they sent this to us with requests to forward it to their students. We did not have any contact information available, so couldn't possibly help them. Today we're very happy that we are in a position to help, and we will continue to do so to ensure that none of us should ever be shy for an education. It is our mission to make sure that all educators in this world genuinely understand what technology is and what it can do for them in this rapidly changing world. We will continue to provide our services based on curation, peer-to-peer learning and artificial intelligence to ensure that no teacher is left behind. TeachPit today is a growing community and product with over 46,000 subscribers from over 205 countries. And we're working with hundreds of schools to ensure that everyone can learn more and teach better. I very much look forward to chatting some more with you during the online conference, as well as meeting you in person in 2021. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Anna Zielonka. I'm a global educator, project manager, and an instructional coach. Since 2008, I have worked at Nanesta High School. In this short talk, I'm going to reflect on the changing roles of educators. William Ward, an American pastor, writer and teacher, said once, "The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires." This quote, which was created more than 60 years ago, is still alive. Over the past decades, we've all seen drastic changes in the education system. Competence-based curriculum, problem-based learning, design thinking, self and peer assessment, active learning, connections-based learning, experiential learning, personalized learning, education for sustainable development, various aspects of entrepreneurial education and the move from feedback to feed-forward have been advocated. The act of teaching and learning isn't confined to the classroom. Instead, extends into online spaces, very often social media networking sites, home, community, and other places where our students tend to spend their free time. Information isn't confined to course books only, but it's available everywhere, like never before. Heavy lexicons and crowded libraries are things of the past. Students aren't consumers of facts and figures any longer, but active producers of educational materials and creators of knowledge. Both technological and cultural changes have impacted teachers' work to a large degree. By looking at these aforementioned trends and changes happening in the educational sector, we can clearly state that teachers of 2020 should be lifelong learners who continue learning across their career throughout their whole life and use formal and informal opportunities to learn. Relationship builders and social-emotional learning gurus who promote positive student-teacher relationships and sense of school belonging, assist students with motivation and goal setting, enhance student understanding, attitudes, and behavior that promote health, well-being, and human dignity. Collaborators who allow learners to choose the learning that is occurring and to take responsibility for it. The teacher acts as a monitor for this independent learning and encourages the learner to learn autonomously. Digital citizens, technology embracers, who use digital tools and resources to track their own and students' progress and learning, share best knowledge and practice online, and offer flexible learning experiences. Mentors who serve as thought partners for students on their academic journey and help empower students to become autonomous learners and agents of their own change. One cannot forget about the huge impact of COVID-19 on education. The pandemic forced many teachers all over the world to rethink every part of their jobs, their relationship with students, the digital tools and techniques they use, their rights and responsibilities, the form and content of curriculum, what standards to set and how to assess students' work, their preparation as teachers, and their ongoing professional development. Moving from analog to digital teaching in the time of pandemic has shown how flexible and fast-working teachers are. Even if they were not mentors, collaborators, or digital citizens before, COVID-19 made them become one. It's also worth mentioning that publishers around the world have reacted quickly to support teachers in this difficult period and have made many books and learning resources freely available online. These free resources include interactive books and learning tools, audiobooks, and specific guidance for teachers in areas such as running virtual classrooms, lesson planning, and professional development. The success of students is the ultimate goal of education. However, we have to remember what makes that success possible. An effective teacher. An effective teacher is not someone utilizing the methods and initiatives of past times, but rather embracing the culture of 2020 and adapting to the needs of students today. The effective teacher will connect the art and science of teaching to make the learning environment relevant and applicable for their students. The teacher will thrive and the students will flourish when the role of the teacher adapts to the needs of culture of today. To sum up, teachers are reinventing themselves and their occupation to better serve their schools, students and communities by rethinking learning and teaching. Thus, one can say that the number of hats teachers wear has just increased.
For the past couple of years, I have investigated how we can bring teachers into the process of designing and redesigning digital teaching materials. Since spring 2020, the situation has changed a lot. What we see now is hybrid learning spaces where the teachers need to navigate with their students in new ways and new forms. The pandemic has provided a unique insight into how educators collaborate in transforming the learning designs from a dominating face-to-face mode of teaching and into something more useful to suit the new conditions. Teachers mix formal and informal formats, and digital and analog technologies are used in that purpose. In my opinion, we have become more pragmatic in relation to the frameworks within which learning takes place. All in all, this has been a challenging development, but it gives us a chance to see into what teaching might be like in the near future. My name is Morten Bülow, and I've been a high school teacher for more than 20 years. In the same period, I have been developing lots of digital materials of different kinds. Right now, I'm working on a project in the Danish School of Education, where we're trying to figure out how we can redevelop and redesign teaching materials for youth education. From a teacher's perspective, the most visible change might have been the shift towards hybridization of education and of our lives. We share co-working spaces with colleagues and family. We bring our classes into our homes and ourselves into the students' homes. We are, so to speak, at home and in class at the same time, and the same counts for the student. The context has transformed, and the resources that the students bring into the learning space have altered too.
The motivation definitely fell a lot in the first months, and then it obviously got better because the teachers learned a lot of new tools in online learning, so it definitely became better. And I also think there's definitely some kind of future in like online education, because there are some really good tools.
The teachers are actually doing it really well. I admire the work that the teachers do. The software, it's lacking some parts, but I think we've come a long way with the software from the beginning of the virus and the lockdown. There have been a lot of upgrades to the software, but still not the same as being physically in a classroom.
It is evident that the spaces where we teach and learn are changing. Technology is both enhancing and invading the learning experiences. I suggest a focus on the hybridity that will highlight both the challenges and the opportunities in loosening up the boundaries between context of learning, working, playing and living. Hybrid learning spaces open opportunities and pose challenges to designers of learning experiences. I will therefore suggest 3 new design principles to guide us in making even better digital materials for all learners. First, we see a growing interest in the promises of learning analytics, artificial intelligence, and educational data mining. New design principles should include the recognition of the valuable intersection between data and educational design. Secondly, students and teachers are not offered the facilities that would make it possible for them to reconfigure or just adjust the teaching materials to the student's zone of proximal development. Design principles should therefore incorporate a technology that could support us in recapturing the legitimacy and the credibility we have, to a certain degree, lost in the process of hybridization. Thirdly, I have found that teaching materials seldom support transfer of learning. I have also found that students actively redesign and co-configure their learning activities when they try to handle the demands they meet in educational settings. These strategies are often what you would call minimax strategies, where students focus on meeting requirements, not on actual learning. Design principles should therefore support transfer of knowledge from the formal teaching to other contexts. We could redesign exercises and textbooks and make the teaching materials more exploratory, more useful and more engaging. In other words, technology cannot in itself improve learning. Not even Belmer Prize winning learning materials do the trick. My central argument is that a greater awareness of students' resource ecologies and the importance of understanding the teacher's learning designs in hybrid learning settings will clarify a need to rethink the way we develop better digital teaching materials.
My name is Torben Benoni. I'm 48 years old and I'm a high school teacher at EU Gymnasium in Aarhus, Denmark. I teach physics, philosophy, astronomy and math. This is what my school looks like today. Lots of activities, lots of students, just the way school should be. And this is what it looked like during the 2 periods of lockdown that we've experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. No students at the blackboards in the common area helping each other understand mathematical proofs. No students busy doing experiments in the lab. No groups of students studying political philosophy in the classrooms. And no colleagues to share a cup of coffee with. The school was shut down completely for 7 weeks in March, April, May, and for another 2 weeks in August. Luckily, every student at the school has their own laptop and they have access to high-speed internet and webcam. So we've been able to have synchronous online classes the whole time, with students and teacher being online at the same time in a virtual classroom. That is the case for almost every high school in Denmark, and that has been a great advantage in this special situation. Now, this is my home office in my kitchen from where I've been teaching online, with my headset and my cup of coffee, all alone, except for my 3 children, all engaged in online classes somewhere else in the house, my wife also teaching high school students online, and our dog probably peeing on the floor somewhere. Not that quiet, actually. So, it was a lot of work to start teaching online. You had to learn how to use new software, and you had to plan your classes very differently. During the first few days of the lockdown, teachers and students quickly became familiar with tools for online teaching, and the major Danish publishers provided free access to digital learning materials. Using digital learning materials obviously makes it easy as a teacher to present topics for the student online, and for teachers and students to discuss homework, activities, assignments, etc. online. And interactive elements in digital learning materials help you maintain a variation in activities and teaching methods that is certainly needed. You can even use virtual physics laboratories to replace actual experiments in the lab, at least to some degree. So far so good. The surprise for me, though, was that some of the students that tend to be quieter in the regular classroom suddenly began to participate more in the virtual classroom, and were surprisingly clever and articulate. Probably because they didn't have to bother with what clothes they were wearing, what the other students thought about them, and so on, and were able to focus entirely on learning activities. But while a few students thrive in the virtual classroom, most students find it harder and harder to concentrate and stay motivated over the course of a whole day with online classes. Quickly it became very obvious how important it is that you're able to look the student in the eye, that you're able to smile and laugh and small talk. The personal relation between teacher and student and among students are fundamental for teaching in several ways. It's important in creating an environment that encourages learning. It's especially important for motivating the more challenged students. And it's important for the teacher when trying to figure out exactly what parts are difficult for a student to understand. And that relation changes when you enter a virtual classroom. So after a few days of talking to a wall of black boxes with my students' names on them, I and many other teachers started asking students to turn on their cameras. And to me, it was a lot more motivating to be able to see the students' reaction when I was explaining things. Students' presentations worked much better, and the learning outcome of talking to groups and students in breakout rooms improved greatly. It meant that we were able to restore at least some of that personal relation that is so important in teaching. So in my opinion, it's very important for online teaching that students have access to high-speed internet and the technology that makes it possible for students and teachers not only to share their screens, but also to be able to see each other's faces, at least from time to time. When you have the right tools, I believe that online teaching can be a very useful supplement to the regular classroom.
Hello, my name is Barbara and I teach English to young learners in one of the biggest primary schools in Slovenia. We have several TEYL teachers, but we work on different locations. In March we had to react quickly. On Friday, before the lockdown, we communicated by email and started preparing everything for distant teaching. What I'm really thankful for is being part of the best team I could have wished to work with. Throughout the lockdown, we planned our work together using Skype. We tried to plan things very systematically, step by step, and create useful materials. Once the lessons had been planned, we distributed the preparation of materials and instructions, and in that way we made our work easier and we had more time to spend with our pupils. pupils usually communicated with us by email and sent us their assignments. Yes, that was hard work indeed. As the number of my pupils was around 200, I had to work on the computer from morning till night. But once the lockdown was over, we all agreed that this way of work enabled us to establish a different, more individual connection with our pupils. This was a big plus for the motivation. We read and corrected everything they sent us and wrote the feedback for every assignment, not in the way we used to do in the classroom. The feedback was more individualized and it included also a piece of advice for the pupils to follow in the next assignment. This stimulated pupils, and most of them really did their best. As there were also some pupils who didn't reach the standards, we gave them individualized instructions and exercises, and later on we adjusted the other assignments so that they could catch up with other pupils. From time to time, I also communicated with pupils using Zoom. What I found out was that such a way was good to keep in touch and to talk a bit with them, but it was not so effective for direct teaching. You only had 40 minutes, some pupils had problems logging in, some couldn't join the meetings since their siblings had a meeting too and they only had one computer at home which they had to share. So, in my opinion, the successful distant teaching depended more on very systematically planned learning and detailed instructions and explanations we gave to pupils. But we also had problems with pupils who didn't communicate at all. One very difficult group were the Romani pupils, who are not very teachable even when they are at school. But our school counselor did an excellent job. She contacted all of them using the mobile phone, Facebook, and I don't know how many other applications, and pupils managed to learn the essential things. I'm really grateful to her, since that was a very hard work too. What was more difficult was the communication with those children who had all the required technology and possibilities to do their work, but they simply behaved as the lockdown was a holiday. The problem was that even their parents didn't react to the emails and didn't try to make their children work. Some of the parents were also verbally aggressive. That was very sad and difficult for us. When you try so hard to do your best, it is very depressing when parents and children behave like that. Those pupils lost a lot last year. Not only the knowledge, but they also lost an important message. The message that the knowledge is a great value, and it is our own responsibility to gain it. Having analyzed our distant teaching, we all agree that we all have learned a lot, but that the best way to teach is still at school, having direct contact with our pupils. Unfortunately, the schools are closing again. We just hope that it will be for a short period. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Malan, Eydunsdottir, and I'm a teacher from the Faroe Islands. I work at the largest public school, which is in the capital, Tórshavn. I teach 8th and 9th graders in languages such as Faroese, English and Danish, and also in subjects such as social science, history and religion. Our school Skolan of Fløton is a school where technology is of a high priority, and all the students are equipped with laptops and iPads to use as tools in their education, and the teachers as well. Most of the school books are digitalized, and we use communication platforms such as Teams for assignments, feedback, information, communication, and so on. The school also has a homepage where all the students and their parents can see the curriculum week by week, so they know the plan for each day. When we were all sent home, students and teachers, because of Corona, we were lucky to be technologically well prepared and equipped. And this is probably one of the main reasons why the students so quickly adjusted to the homeschooling, where Teams was the main platform. The students and their parents also received information right away about how the homeschooling was going to be. A school day typically started at 8, where the students joined me in a video group chat on Teams. In the beginning, we of course had a lot of fun and a good laugh because we were all speaking, all 26 of us, at the same time, so you can imagine the chaos. But then we agreed that the students' microphones should be muted or only turned on when they were asked to or supposed to speak. I then gave them an introduction to a topic or a text, and then some instructions on how to do the assignment. They started working, sometimes by themselves, other times in pairs or groups. I was on the chat all the time and available if they needed to ask me something. Then there was a break at 10. And at 11, the next class started with a video group chat. And this was a different subject and often different students. The school day ended on Teams at 1 o'clock, and the students could finish their assignments later that day if they wanted to. The first weeks, most of the assignments I gave my students were written assignments, and this gave me a lot of extra work and was very time consuming because I wanted to give all my students individual feedback. I ended up working all day until late afternoon and many evenings also. But I soon realized that I had to be more creative with the assignments and my teaching as a whole, because the students were complaining about the workload and they needed some change and variation, because the days and weeks spent at home socially distancing were starting to take its toll on them and me as well. So I created new assignments where the students could be more creative and make videos, movies, and video presentations. They went out and took pictures of nature and wrote poems and so on. It was much more motivating for them. So all in all, homeschooling during the Corona pandemic has mostly been a success for me as a teacher. But it was challenging for me in terms of the good relationships I try to have with my students, because it is not the same talking to a person online as it is talking and interacting in person. I really missed my students, and we were all very happy when the school opened again and we could see each other again, from a distance, of course. Thank you, and bye-bye.